G'day everyone, I'm artist Wayne Dowson and welcome to my Anzac Portrait series. Beside me is my latest Anzac portrait which features Ted Mulligan. And Ted has been riding a horse ever since he could walk. And he still rides to this day. The painting is called Life in the Saddle. So ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy part 2 of our interview with 98-year-old World War II veteran Mr. Ted Mulligan.
And I joined the Australian Small Ships. We did a camp at Mount Martha in Melbourne about ships and so on, and then I went to, from there I went to New Guinea. And we were on ships all the time there, you know, cargo ships, and then I was driving landing barges and whatever. I was a bit lucky. One particular, well, there were some terrible boats, there was no doubt about it. One I was on, I don't know why, I was the only person on it that was never seasick. And I'd be one of the only people, I've been probably the only scrubber there. Never been on the water before. But anyway, I just didn't get seasick, and some of the boats were shocking things. How they never turned over, and the seas were massive seas and that, and I liked it, there was no end, but a lot of the other fellas, when they got rough, and we did experience a hell of a lot of rough seas, waves 20, 25 feet high, and the boat turning over, one side you'd be 60 feet up above the water, and the next thing it'd roll over the other way and you'd be almost under the water. But anyway, we got by, but I didn't mind the barges, landing barges. Picked the men up somewhere from camp, and then we take them into where the fighting was. Back the barge into the beach, unload them, and then they'd be into it, you know, a couple hundred yards away or whatever. We had a few hairy, scary events there. You know, the bullets flying around and that sort of thing. But anyway, we overcome it. We never got bowled over. One time I know it was on Mushu Island, and I never found out why this happened till after I read a book called The Guns of Mushu. We were travelling at night, of course, and we went into the wrong harbour, and got within about 20 yards of a lot of the Japs' big guns. And of course they started firing, but they're firing over their heads. Anyway, we got out of there as quickly as we could and went to the right place. And years later, I read a book called The Guns of Mushu, and I found out they couldn't depress their guns low enough to get us. We weren't going to fire back at them at that particular time because they could have blown us to smithereens. Anyway, we got out of that and eventually got to the right right harbour where we were supposed to go, and got out of that all right. Anyway, we had the normal experiences then for the next year or two. And well, this particular Christmas we were down at a place, it's called the Jewel of the Pacific. It's just across a little way from the mainland of New Guinea, down on the tip of it. And being Christmas time, we were asked over by a couple of missionaries. They'd get a sing-song put on by the natives there. The sing-song the natives have goes on maybe all night and half the next day. They dress up in all the robes imaginable, made out of grass skirt, palm leaves and whatever. So we went over, and these missionaries they had a policy of, or business, of cutting timber, selling it to the army. Had these natives working for them, and I believe they were getting 10 shillings a month for it. They were paid, that was their wages they were paying. So anyway, during the course of the night and this sing-song, I got into conversation with one of these missionaries, and I said to him, "You've got a good racket going here, the way you pay on the natives and the money you're making out of it." And of course he took offence to that, and told us to leave. So we were hunted back to the boat. And the captain of the boat, must have been a bit crook, must have had too much hooch anymore, just too much jungle juice. So he said to me, can you get the motors going and move the boat out? Well, I'd had no idea of moving the boat out, so next thing I knocked their wharf arse overhead. So that we were not invited back again anymore. So that, and I can remember well when the surrender came. We'd been up at Wewak where there was a very big battle up there, and we were going down this night. We knew the bomb had been dropped eventually, and we were going back to Jackanow Bay in New Britain. Got within sight at night of Jackanow Bay, there were lights on and all this sort of thing, and we knew then that they'd surrendered. So we went there, stopped there for a couple of days, for a little while, and of course just laid about, did nothing much. And the next thing, they brought the Japanese general down. He had signed he was to sign the surrender on the aircraft carrier, the Glory. So we took him out on our boat, only a small boat, to sign it, and he climbed up the steps onto the airship carrier. I don't know whether you've ever seen an aircraft carrier, but they're beautiful ships, there's no doubt about them. But he couldn't have been terribly well received. They didn't keep him there for a beer or two. He must have signed the surrender and come back. But he was surrounded all the time by 2 or 3 fellows with rifles and bayonets, just a little bit off him, and came back. We took him back to the wharf, and he got into a truck and drove away. Where he went to, I got no idea. But the story, one of the guards that brought him down was telling me that they went up nearly to a ball to get him. They were the natives, Angao natives, and coming back to where we were, they had to cross a river. The natives made him piggyback them over, one at a time, and which I wouldn't doubt for one moment, because they could be pretty severe if they wanted to. They were wonderful people, but they were getting there, giving this bloke his just desserts. So I suppose that would be the first time a Japanese general's piggybacked an Angao soldier across the river, and probably the first time he's ever ridden the back of an army truck too. But anyway, that's the way it went. So then we stopped there. I tried to get into the lot to go to the peacekeeping, not the peacekeeping forces, the occupational forces in Japan, but I was classified as a key personnel. I don't know why, but I was, so I couldn't get there. So I spent the next few months then taking people back to their respective islands and whatever. So overall, I saw a lot of the South. While I was on the ships, I saw a fair bit of the Southwest Pacific. Went to various islands, some lovely places. One place in particular I thought was very nice, lovely place, a place called Kirrawheeney in the Trobriand Islands. It's an island. There's not a rock on the island, but yet there's a setup there similar to those, what they call that in England, where all the stones are, Stonehenge or whatever it's called. Yeah. And they're not and they were lovely people there. I think some of the best looking people I've ever seen in my life. Copper coloured, beautifully built, men and women, solid, and nice people to get on with. And a particular thing happened there. I did a favour for the governor, and so he asked me to come over, and there was, I don't know, about 13 on the boat with me for a dinner one night. So he put on a hell of a good dinner, and I'd never eaten oysters in my life. I couldn't come at them. It was a 13-course meal he put on, and most of the meals were oysters. So I could have oyster soup and oyster patty, but anyway, luckily there was no raw oysters to eat. He gave us these oyster patties, oysters in soup and oysters somewhere else, and you never saw anything like it. And then when we left there, he gave us a grain bag full of oysters to take back to the boat. And some of those oysters there have pearls in them. Not valuable pearls, but they call them burnt pearls for some reason. I don't know why. Now that comes about, but that's what they were. And anyway, we had opened up a few, got a pearl or two out of some of them, threw the rest over the seas, what they didn't eat. And that finished up. And then later on, then I came home to Australia on I forgot, it was on an American Liberty ship. And I got back to Sydney and met my people there. My grandfather had just died, and they'd buried him, and Mum and Dad came down to the wharf to meet me. I missed them, and they came out to some barracks at Marrickville, I think it was, and then I got a few weeks leave and came back, got discharged, and my other cousins that were still left from there were one or two of them killed, but then my brother and a couple of other cousins, one had been a prisoner in Changi, and another chap, they came down and we had about 10 days celebration in Sydney. Beer was very short, of course, but we made the best of some of the rubbish that we got. And then I came home, I'd had enough of it, so I came home, and they came home a week or two after, and then back to work on the place.